saliendo de mi casa es muy fácil conseguir una. Muchacho, casi compré un arma y ya no le sirve o ya no la quiere.
It's lovely to see so many people here. My name is Claire Hutchinson, and I'm with the Gender Advisory Team for the Department of Peacekeeping Operations. And so I'm delighted to be able to be here to moderate this panel because, as you know, it's very important issue we're talking about, especially in terms of small arms and women and children gun security. So I'm going to introduce you to all the panelists. First, I want to thank very much the Government of Norway, the Office of Disarmament Affairs, UN Office of Disarmament Affairs, and IANSA for putting on this panel. Our representatives from high school in New York, Niles Ellis, Samantha Maison, and Phoebe Thomases. Welcome to them. Themselves about human rights issues that they wish to address in their lives. They are moved by the levels of gun violence in the city and have spent the last 2 months meeting with survivors and campaigners working to reduce and prevent gun violence across the city and country. They're connected to IANSA through their research and are excited to be part of today's event, and we're extremely happy to have them here.
Hello. My name is Niles Ellis and I am 14 years old. Over the course of my life, I have heard about and seen a lot of gun violence. I remember watching the 11 o'clock news late at night and seeing story after story about people being shot in their community by family members, by strangers, and sometimes by turning a gun on themselves. I started wondering why every day someone had to lose a loved one to gun violence. I also started to question why the news reporters would show this violence like it was normal and unavoidable. Don't they understand that an epidemic is happening all around us? This has made me want to do something about gun violence and assist communities in helping themselves solve gun violence issues. At school, part of my class was to choose a civil and human rights issue to work on. I decided to focus on gun violence as my topic. I think that freedom from guns and gun violence is a fundamental civil right and a human right, and I'm very glad to be here today.
My name is Samantha Mason, and I am 13 years of age. I am of Guyanese descent, and I live in the Bushwick area of Brooklyn, New York. I was born and raised in East Flatbush. In that neighborhood growing up, activity related to gun violence was rare, but did happen. I remember times when you could hear gunshots outside at nighttime. Even though it wasn't happening to me, I remember wondering who was getting shot. How did their family feel? So I decided to further my knowledge about gun violence and, as an individual, think about how I can change this. As a member of the Black community, I wanted to understand why so many young Black people, and people of other ethnic groups for that matter, would kill each other. Through our project, I have started to learn much more about what people are doing to prevent more gun violence throughout New York City. It has been very enlightening.
Hi, my name is Phoebe Thomases, and I am 14 years old. My mom has been an advocate against gun violence for most of my life. For the last 10 years, since I was 4, I have been taken to events to raise awareness about guns and gun violence in New York City and beyond. In a way, I have grown up in the world of gun violence prevention. But as I have gotten older, I have started to really understand how important this work is to people in communities where there's a lot of gun violence. Seeing mothers, grandmothers, distant relatives, and friends speak out about loved ones they have lost is very meaningful. Not only seeing their pain and suffering has been important to me, but knowing how many of these people are trying to deal with the issue of gun violence in different communities has inspired me. Meeting families and individuals that have been affected by guns has really made me understand what a huge problem gun violence is in our country, and caused me to want to help and raise awareness about this important issue in any way I can. My group and I will now present some statistics that describe gun violence in the United States. Then we'll show a video of women who work to stop gun violence in their neighborhoods.
One of the ways that women have been affected by gun violence in New York is through domestic violence. We found that according to Women's Sphere, Global Women's News, Views, and Issues, up to 50% of women murder victims in New York State are killed by intimate partners. Many of these killings are perpetrated with guns.
We also found that in the United States, children are victims of gun violence in disproportionate numbers. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 3,184 children and teens died from gunfire in the United States in 2006. This means one young life was lost every 2 hours and 45 minutes, almost 9 every day, 61 every week. Some of these deaths were accidents and some were a suicide, but the majority were homicides.
Despite the present situation of gun violence that is affecting women and children in New York City and the United States, we spoke to a few women who are working on combating gun violence in their areas. We wanted to highlight Davina Perez of the Put Down the Guns organization in the Bronx, Yvette Forehand of the Rory A. Forehand Foundation, and Gloria Cruz of the Million Mom March Bronx chapter. All of these women were personally affected by gun violence.
The Put Down the Guns organization was founded by Davina Perez, a survivor of gun violence. She was shot at point-blank range in a New York City train station, targeted as a part of a gang initiation. The shooter went on to kill a man later that evening. That was the moment that changed her life. She now works to bring young people from New York's 5 boroughs together in peace through community-wide activities involving music and sports.
Rory A. Forehand was a victim of gun violence on February 24, 2007. Yvette Forehand, his mother, and many other family members then started the Rory A. Forehand Foundation in his memory to provide educational and recreational activities in a safe environment. They also place a stern emphasis on education and nonviolence, encouraging both youth and adults to become productive individuals in their society.
The United States is supposedly a country at peace, yet every day people kill each other with guns. We will continue to work on helping communities and organizations in New York and beyond, helping kids and adults live in nonviolent ways. We hope we have inspired you today.
And so now, finally, last but not least, I want to turn it over to Mr. Daniel Prinz, who's representing the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs. Daniel heads the Conventional Arms Branch of the UN Office of Disarmament Affairs in New York. From 1993 to 2007, he was a diplomat for the Dutch government. Prior to joining the Foreign Service, he was a lecturer in international security at the Royal Netherlands Naval College. Daniel.
Well, thank you very much. And I was wondering, could I venture a bit into why we jointly organize a meeting like this, and perhaps, just a very few points on this. But before I start, I was struck by a number of contributions from the field, as we say here at headquarters, including very close by, actually. And one of the things that I take with me is what Niles just said, that he wondered how armed violence often is presented as normal, as unavoidable, and that is, I think, exactly the right thing to put up here, because we work on these issues on a daily basis, and in a sense they become normal to you, and that's why it's so good to now and then are reminded that it is of course not normal at all, and that we have to continue to be vigilant against it.
Thank you, Daniel, and I absolutely agree. I think it's, we need to make note that security is also about human security, and human security is about the partnership of women and men in framing this discourse about what is security. And too often, women are excluded from the security debate, and I think it's very important, as we know that small arms pose one of the greatest threats to peace and security we have today. And 15 years on from Beijing, 10 years on from 1325, we have a lot more work to do.